Welcome into Courtside Seats with Kroeger,
a Charlotte Hornets podcast.
Here he is, Chris Kroeger.
Episode 31 of Courtside Seats, and we're on the road once again. We got our season-long 11-day, 6-game Western Conference road trip. Chris Kroeger, and we're joined by Sam Perley of Hornets.com. What's up, man?
Thank you for having me. Yeah, long trip so far. Well, long distance-wise, we're out here in California. It's not nearly as sunny as some of us thought. Same with Phoenix, but overall, it's a pretty nice place to be right now.
It's funny, you don't say this very often, where you leave Charlotte in early January and the weather's better, I think, back in Charlotte than it's been on the road. But it was rainy and like 45 when we got to Phoenix, but we left with a win. So
yeah,
everything's
that's all
better.
that matters.
Everything's better. So Hornets, as we tape this episode, as we tape episode 31, Hornets sitting at 19-20, and if you want to say getting the proverbial monkey off your back, I think that's more or less what happened against the Suns on Sunday night, in 4-game losing streak on the road, 1-8 in the previous 9 road games. And I know it wasn't pretty, and it took theatrics from Tony and Kemba in the fourth quarter to make it happen, but the Hornets get a win, and I think have shown some real hope and promise, I think, through the first 2 games of the road trip that, okay, maybe this looked really daunting, but you keep playing this way, and I think there are going to be some good results.
Yeah, I like the way they played against Denver. Obviously, you're down 2 starters right now with Cody and Jeremy, and the traveling takes a toll. Being in elevation takes. So I thought they played well, and that Denver team is really good, really, really good team, very well rounded. And then you go on a back-to-back to take on a Phoenix team that these teams can get anybody on any given night, and they got close and they lost Devin Booker, and it gave a couple guys a chance in the back of the rotation to step up. So you're right, it wasn't pretty, but considering the circumstances with the injuries, traveling, being on the West Coast, there's no such thing as an ugly win. Well, it might be an ugly win, but not a bad win.
And here's the crazy thing too is, you talk about how long the schedule is in this league, right? And you think, oh, you blink and you miss it. It's absolutely true, because all of a sudden we go into this Clippers game on Tuesday, and that's game 40. And so game 41 is going to come in Portland on Friday. We're at the halfway mark. It is
crazy.
Absolutely wild to think we're at the halfway mark of the opening season of James Borrego's first year as head coach for the Hornets. But here we are, and I think context is everything, right? And Coach would probably be the first one to say this. All right, what do we think of the results so far, right? And I think because of some of the tight losses and maybe the struggles in the fourth quarter, some of the losses on the road, especially to teams where you feel like, man, we could have had those games. Everybody's sick of those losses and sick over them, and you wish they could have been different. But all things considered, to have a top 10 offense, to be sitting there in the Eastern Conference playoff picture on the right side of the bubble right now, with head-to-head tiebreakers already secured against a team like Detroit. You've guaranteed a split with a team with Miami. You're 1-1 with Brooklyn. You're sitting there right now up 2-0 on Orlando, too. One more win, and you take that season series. So I say all that to say, I think if you had said that going into the season, that this is where the Hornets would be basically at the halfway mark, I know there are other things you still want to improve on, but I'd say, you know what, it's been a pretty good start to the James Borrego era.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's easy to kind of focus on those games that you're like, okay, we could have had that one, or that one got away, or this and that one come up with points short. But we've also had a fair share of games where we've been on the other side. You look at the Phoenix game, I know it was 6 points because Kemba hit that shot at half court, but that's essentially a one-possession game. You beat Detroit a couple times. You beat a good win over Denver earlier in the year, Boston. They've beaten some good teams. It's easy to kind of focus on the games where, we could have had that one. But you got to look at the ones you did get, the ones you did kind of come through in crunch time and got a couple last-minute or last-second victories. So obviously I think it's right there in that 6 to 8 seed, like you said, right on the right side of the advantage with some of these teams that could be a tiebreaker with. So, and they're ahead of where they were last year at this point. So
I've never seen anything like it, though, when you look at the fact that to this point, and there's another opportunity coming up on Tuesday against the Clippers, the Hornets could be at 500 for the 18th time through 20 games. You're literally only capable, it's only mathematically possible 20 times, and they have a possibility to do it 18 times in the first 20 games. And they hit every win number along the way except for 12, and now the Hornets are going to skip over 19 and 19. That one's off the table too. So they hit 1-1, 2-2, 3-3, 4-5. I've never seen anything like this. And Coach keeps using this term resiliency, and I think he's right. But I mean, it's unbelievable. I've never seen a team kind of yo-yo back and forth between never getting too high or never getting too low, but that's what the Hornets have done through the first half.
Yeah, and I think it's sort of it's a blessing and a curse a little bit. It's obviously I think a couple times last year, earlier in the season, the team had a 5, 6, 7 games losing streak, and things kind of got away, and then they were playing from behind the rest of the season. And right now, it's not like that. I mean, they do a good job of they lose two in a row or even one in a row. They find a way to kind of right them. But at the same time, it's like when you get 2 wins, getting that third win, turning 3 wins into 4, and they're kind of balanced. So it's good in one sense, but the other sense you want to start build momentum with wins and follow 2 wins with a third win.
And I do think, and I feel so strongly about this, and I thought that 5-game homestand would present an opportunity for it. But if the Hornets could go on a stretch, just literally one stretch, where you win 5 in a row, I think they are firmly in the playoff picture.
Yeah.
I think one sort of push like that with the way the Eastern Conference is right now. I think it's there for the taking, and they can still do that. There's so much time left to do it, but I think that's how solid the Hornets are. That if you could just find a way to give me a 2-week stretch where you just everything comes together, everything clicks on both ends of the court. Because I think right now the Hornets have the mark of a playoff caliber team so far. Yeah,
and you see this in the NBA year to year. There's always teams that maybe get into mid-January and they're kind of just either treading water or 4 or 5 games under 500. You look at a team like the Utah Jazz last year was a good example of that. I think when they came to Charlotte last year, they were kind of just this, and then they went on a run. Mm-hmm. And you see other teams do it, and whether it's getting guys back from injury, guys get in place the role, schedule, whatever it is. Sometimes things just click, and success just takes off.
Well, and I think what people forget is, let's go back all the way to 2015-16, right? So that 48-win season for the Hornets. Hornets actually got out of the gates kind of slow, right? You're sitting there at 5-6, then they put a win streak together. Their high watermark early on was 14-8, and all of a sudden you're starting to think, okay, here come the Hornets, right? They go. I think they went 8-2 in that 10-game stretch, and then you get towards the All-Star break, and the Hornets are sitting there right at around 500. The Hornets go to the All-Star break at 27-26, and then they come out of that and they lose just 6 times the rest of the year after the All-Star break. They had I think that year they had the second best record after the All-Star break that season. And the Courtney Lee trade helped. Yep. I think Courtney Lee really solidified the Hornets on both ends of the court, but it was still the same team. And guess what? I think Jeremy Lin is what the Hornets have in Tony Parker now, a guy off the bench that can play with Kemba, give you scoring when you need it. So I'm with you. I don't know if anybody could say, okay, I see the Hornets having the third best or second best record after the All-Star break, but there's precedent for it. They did it a few years ago, and I think it makes you forget that, the Hornets were much the same that season too. They were a team just trying to find their way, and I think everybody looks at like the Warriors of the NBA. They look at what Denver, and we saw them up close and personal the other night. You look at Toronto, you see Indiana, all these Philadelphia, all the teams at the top. Yeah, that's why those teams are 50, 60-win teams. They find a way to play. They do it consistently from the jump. But most of the teams in the NBA are like the Hornets. They're still searching. They're trying to find an identity. And once you hammer in on it, that's when magic happens. And so the Hornets are still trying to find that right now.
Absolutely, and it's all about consistency. It's the teams that, like we've seen not numerous times, but a handful of times this year. You can lose to anybody on any given night, and you can beat anybody on any given night. And a good example is if the Hornets want to be one of these teams that finishes in that 6-7 range in the playoffs, you got to go out and beat your Phoenixes. You've got to go out and beat your Atlanta Hawks, your Cavs, your teams like that, and then start playing well and stuff starts clicking. Who knows? Maybe you pull a big win over this tough Clippers team tomorrow night, or you go beat Portland, or you go beat Sacramento. And I think last night was, when you kind of alleviate this 4-game losing streak a little bit, you can take a sigh of relief and say, okay, we got one. Let's build on it. Let's get another one. Let's see if we can go 3-3 or 4-2 on this road trip. So I think last night was more than just a win. Hopefully, it's kind of just a like you said, kind of gets that monkey off your back a little bit.
But I'll say this, and this isn't an excuse, this isn't to write anything off. You look at the NBA right now, there are really, obviously I think the Bulls that's become a bit of a mess. What's going on in Chicago, they're still trying to climb out of whatever they've done with their roster. I don't think they know, right? They're
fired coach too.
Yeah, so they're in a situation right now. Cleveland, obviously, the injuries with them that struck early, especially with Kevin Love, sent them into a spiral. They expected to be a playoff team, and they're sitting at the bottom of the East right now with 8 wins, and they've made trades to try and start thinking about the future. And then you see Phoenix, and we saw them on Sunday. They're a talented team, though, and I know they have the worst record now no longer. Cleveland has the worst record in the NBA, but I see pieces with them with DeAndre Ayton, Josh Jackson, who had a career night against the Hornets. Devin Booker, obviously. I think T.J. Warren's starting to come along. But my point is, you look around the NBA where even a year or 2, 3 years ago, there were teams that probably weren't trying to be as competitive right now as they are. This league, the parity, I know parity's on a sliding scale compared to like the NFL, but I think the parity in the NBA we're seeing now, it's as good as it's been in quite some time. So you have to bring it every night, because if you don't, look at Sacramento, for example. Who saw Sacramento doing what they're doing so far this year?
Nobody.
Yeah.
And they've been great. They've been outstanding. We're going to see them on the fifth leg of this trip. I mean, they've been. Buddy Hield is having an amazing year, all things considered. With he came over in the DeMarcus Cousins trade a couple years ago. They've got a lot of guys. They drafted well.
De'Aaron Fox all of a sudden has taken a big step
really probably taking the biggest jump of that 2017 draft class. Bogdanovich has been playing great off the bench for them, and it's. There's no easy nights. Like you said, Phoenix, if you don't play well and you don't do what you need to do against Phoenix, they can get you. Just like Cleveland can get you. Same thing. If Denver doesn't have that good little run there in the fourth quarter, we took them on, maybe we come out on top of that game. So I think it's good for the league. I think it's good when you don't have a Warriors or all the talent and winning and success concentrated at the top. It makes for a more interesting and captivating season to follow for sure.
Biggest storyline through 40 games for the Hornets, maybe, and that could be anything. That could be something that's grabbed your attention, something that's been surprising or interesting to you. What's been one of the biggest storylines, I guess, for the Hornets so far through the halfway point?
I think I'll go with one that's obvious and then one that's maybe not as bad. It's Kemba Walker. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. He's had he's coming off 3 really good years. A couple years ago was when he kind of made that jump after getting the 3-point shot, but he's taking things to another level right now. He's averaging about 26 points a game, assists at an all-time high. The efficiency's starting to come back a little bit more as he's adjusting to the opposing defenses. But last night, it was just what a luxury. I mean, Marvin Williams said it in the locker room after the game in Phoenix. He's like, we are spoiled as players, because you can sit back and like, wow, this guy is capable of scoring 18 of 19 to close out the game in 4.5 minutes. And it's just, I think it's easy to just kind of sit back and let's just watch this guy do his thing. And he was incredible against the Suns. And, hopefully he's sitting there third right now in the East for guards in the All-Star game. How cool would that be to get him starting in Charlotte for the All-Star game next month?
Yeah, and you think about that game, I think, too, well, maybe it was Brooklyn, Kemba, and Tony combined in the fourth quarter for a game. I think they had 24 of our 26 in the fourth.
Home against Brooklyn, I think, right before New Year's.
So those two, electric in that game, they literally did it all. And then Tony, in the fourth quarter, on Sunday against the Suns, I think he had 8, and then Kemba came in with his 18, and so they combined for 26 of the Hornets. I think Hornets had 32 or 34 against Phoenix in the fourth that night. So this has now become really common, where Tony comes in and is electric, and then he kind of hands it off to Kemba, and he finishes the deal. But those two together, I have to say, without a shadow of a doubt, in my opinion, that's one of the top 5 free agent signings in the NBA this year.
In terms of in value and stuff. And I always love when we go to these opposing stadiums. It's still weird, sort of a dynamic, seeing Tony Parker in a different uniform, let alone our uniform.
Yeah.
Hearing all these opposing fans telling him he needs to retire and this and that, and Tony will go and hit a mid-range 2 or sneak one right underneath the basket. It's fun to watch, and it has been a pleasure watching him. And I think one other storyline that's kind of getting lost, who deserves a lot of credit for his play this season, is Jeremy Lamb. I mean, he in the beginning of his career, he was one of these guys that had a lot of athletic ability, very, very raw, but didn't know how to put it all together. And he's really taken care of his body and really taken care of his off-the-court game in the last few years. And I know he's hurt right now. It seems like kind of a mild hamstring strain, so hopefully he'll be back soon. But he's averaging 15 points. Is one of the best. I think he might be the best rebounder in the league amongst 2 guards. And to earn that starting spot and to take his game to another level this year, I think has been extraordinary and real testament to the work he's put in the last couple summers.
Yeah, when he went out to injury, he at that point was leading qualified shooting guards, which you got to play in, I think, 80% of your team's games, in rebounds per game. So that's the other part about his game that, to your point, like, I think everybody has recognized Jeremy's become more of a scorer, but this year what's changed is it's not from the perimeter. He's playing inside out. He's getting to the basket. He's getting fouled. His pull-up game, his mid-range game has become lethal. And his length, which is so impressive, that's probably his greatest trait as a player. He's now using that to his advantage to bait defenders into fouls. He's using that to create his own space to get a shot off. And The three-point shooting has been good. I think he's hanging around 35% from three. It's respectable. He's been really good in the corners, but it's the other parts of his game that's grown, including the rebounding and the defense. And I remember talking to him a few months ago, and he was saying that was the thing that Coach Cliff always said, I believe in you. I know you can do this, and I'm going to expect that you do it. And he said JB has done that and taken it to the next level. JB came in and said, I see you doing these things. I think you could do even more. I think you could do these things, and I expect you to do it. So we talk about growth in the NBA a lot, and I get it with Jeremy Lamb where maybe to your point, you don't think about it. You'd say, oh, well, he's been in the league long enough. This is who he is as a player. But I think Jeremy's track record, he has now improved. This will be the 5th season in a row his points per game has gone up every single year.
Yeah, and obviously, I mean, it is starting now and getting more minutes, but his efficiencies, and I remember when Scott Brooks, who's coach in Oklahoma City, was here last year, he talked a lot about Jeremy's development. He said he got to Oklahoma City as a rookie and was just completely raw. I mean, he just wasn't necessarily physically ready for the game, and he's worked hard. And sometimes I think we have high expectations for rookies and young guys when they come in. We want them to come in and be stars right away. And you see a Jason Tatum or Devon Mitchell. Sometimes it takes 3 or 4 years. It takes a little bit of time. Guys are coming in younger and younger, and it just takes some time. And one more thing to Jerry. One thing that's really impressed me is how many different ways he can score now. So like you said, he gets to the basket. He shoots the threes, mid-range, floaters. I mean, it's so much. Seeing him when he first came into Charlotte a few years ago and now to where he is now reminds me a little bit. One guy that is really good at creating different shots is Mike Conley. I know they're very different players, and I'm not comparing their careers by any means, but Mike Conley's the kind of guy that he can drive left and throw in a righty floater or something like that, or do in kind of an off-balance bank. And Jeremy has found different ways to score. And that's a guy that Mike Conley just sticks out to me as he's one of those guys that can create shots in so many different ways, unconventionally sometimes.
Well, I think what happens is, because you see it all the time, like if you're a defender, you're on your heels, you don't know which way he's coming at you, quite literally, because he's giving you a straight line drive to the right, and maybe, as you said, he finishes left, but with his right hand. He's just got this weird ability, and I think it's because of his length. Yeah. It's his legs, it's his arms. He's just one giant long body out there, and I think it really messes with defenders trying to stay in front of him. I also think that's why he's been getting fouled so often. And then you talk about Kemba. The other storyline with Kemba to me too is it's obviously the fourth quarter. So 8.6 points per game in the fourth, best in the NBA for any player. He's hit more fourth quarter threes than any other player. He's got 38 of those. The next closest guy's got 29. That's James Harden. So he's 9 clear. And Harden's playing in a lot of fourth quarters because the Rockets need Harden. And then you mix in the other aspect of it. And I was looking this up today. Kemba is 6th in field goals made in the fourth. I think it's 82 is the number. And his percentage of shots that were assisted by teammates, that they assisted
set him up for.
Yes, 25.6. He's the only player in the top 10 in fourth quarter field goals made to be below that 30% mark. And a bulk of the other guys are in the 40s, 50s, and some of them are into the 60s. When you look at a guy like Anthony Davis, who's well above 55%, he has the most fourth quarter field goals, and I think he's been assisted on like 56% of those. So what does that say? To me, that tells you the degree of difficulty on what Kemba's doing. So it's one thing to say, a guy's scoring a lot in the fourth. Jordan Clarkson's in the top 5. In field goals made in the fourth. Well, that probably tells me he's given his team's record. Yeah, you're in cleanup time. But with Kemba, these are meaningful baskets because his team needs them. The defense knows he's going to have the ball in his hand. He's still hitting them, and he's basically doing it on his own. So the degree of difficulty on not only the volume of what he's doing, but to mix that into the equation, I don't know what else you could say. Like, the guy, without a doubt to me, is playing at an All-NBA level right now. If the season ended today, Kemba would be an All-NBA player.
I mean, he's been absolutely extraordinary, and I'll go back to what Marvin said last night in the locker room. I think we were spoiled. We were spoiled as the Hornets team and as working for the organization, fans too. I mean, this guy's what he's doing is so hard to do. To think that you're the main scorer, and you got to forget, he's 6'1". That's not the easiest means to score, but he has so many different ways to attack the basket. Last night, he was getting to the pick and roll around Ayton. He was getting free throws, jump shots, step backs. I mean, and kind of harping back to what we're talking about Jeremy Lamb, when you can score in so many different ways, it's so much harder to defend when you can do multiple things, and that's what helped take his game to the next level. So unbelievable season so far, and to see guys that continue to get better and better. He does not satisfy. He wasn't satisfied making an all-star team. Wasn't satisfied making a second one. I mean, and you ask him, this doesn't even matter to him. He just wants to win. If he had to score 40 points and take every shot in the fourth quarter last night, he would have done it. All the guy wants to do is win, and that's what you want from your leader and your captain.
And we should say, it's a perfect time, you could vote to get him into the All-Star game for a third straight year, but really, he's close to starting. The early returns, he was third in Eastern Conference guards in the All-Star voting. Kyrie was 1, Dwayne Wade was 2nd, but now the voting, I know that sounds like, oh no, Dwayne's going to start. Well, it's set up where 50% of the fan vote counts, and then it's 25 and 25 for media and players and coaches, right? So as long as Kemba keeps playing at this level, and I think there's no reason he won't in the next 2 weeks while voting's still live till January 21st, I think he's going to get the nod. This isn't going to be a situation where Kobe Bryant gets all the popular votes his last season and gets thrown out there.
They didn't have the rules when Kobe did that. I think this is kind of a newer thing to prevent situations like that. And, it's so hard to make an all-star team. I mean, and you might only have 1 or 2 seasons where you have the numbers and the personnel in your conference that lines up and you get to it. So I think the NBA's done a good job of kind of at least giving fans a vote, but also kind of balancing a little bit. With all due respect to Dwayne Wade, a Hall of Famer, 13, 14 NBA All-Stars. The guy's not playing at an All-Star level this year. It's just the way it is. But, obviously it's a fans game. They want to see him there. And there's other examples, guys from different countries. You see Luka right now is 2nd in the West. Zaza a couple of years ago, too, won the fan voting because his Republic of Georgia voted him in. So hopefully, and Kemba's got such great respect amongst coaches throughout the league. I mean, you ask if you go to the media scrums before the game, and everyone goes, we'd have no idea how to stop this guy. He just gets better and better and better. And it's the Brad Stevens, it's the Steve Kerrs, it's the Eric Spoelstras, it's the Mike D'Antonis. I mean, he's getting, it might be a small market, but he's captured a lot of the attention of the rest of the league and has the respect of coaches and players throughout the NBA.
Well, and you talk about, to do this at his size. So I was looking this up just for kicks and giggles the other day. His stat line, what he's averaging right now, which is 25, 4, and 6. He was averaging 25, 5, and 6 for a while, but it's basically 24, 4, and 6. 25 points, 4 rebounds, 6 assists. He's just a hair under 6 right now. That's come back down a little bit the last few weeks. But that stat line, nobody 6'1" or shorter has ever averaged that stat line for an entire year in the NBA. And I think we don't even talk about the rebounding enough sometimes with him.
7 last night.
How does a guy who's 6'1" grab that many rebounds? But he does have a great ability. I think you watch him, and it's a fun thing to watch, the game within the game. He tracks down the ball really well, and he'll pick it up in stride and start the break, right? So I think that's an ability, too, that, because of the scoring and the three-point shooting and the ball handling, all the other things that he's able to do, his passing, like you said, is going to another level. But the rebounding, I'm always blown away at how well he rebounds because, again, nobody at his size has ever posted that stat line for an entire year. And so just add another accolade. And if he becomes an all-star, and it's almost a lock at this point, he'll be the only other Hornet other than Glenn Rice to make three all-star games in a career. So another record for the captain.
Absolutely. No, I think watching the rebound, we were sitting last night in Phoenix, and it was so funny watching. You've got DeAndre Ayton, you've got Rashawn Holmes, and some of these big Phoenix Sun guys, and you kind of see Kemba just underneath the basket. He'll go up and grab it and come back down. Oh, goodness. I mean, and I give credit to Malik, had a couple situations like that where he had a couple big rebounds, and I think when Kemba can get those rebounds, it automatically gets the defense. I mean, this guy's fast, he's quick, and like you said, he starts the break, gets the defense on their heels, and he can go heels and go coast to coast, and you sort of save. And that's not normal to see. A 6'1" point guard. Usually, you kind of stay. I'll let my Billy or Biz or Cody or somebody. That's their job. They're the rebounders. But James Borrego has preached. This is a rebounding by committee. You're going to need 4 or 5 guys to get 5 or 6, 7 rebounds apiece. There's no more Dwight Howard here anymore. Now with Cody gone, even more shorthanded on the rebounding. So Kemba's definitely been part of that rebound committee, and 7 rebounds last night on top of the 29 points kind of gets lost. But, obviously marvelous job last night.
I'll give you another storyline. Marvin Williams. How about Marvin? Now all of a sudden starting to climb back up the three-point shooting rankings. You look at what Marvin has done from a three-point shooting standpoint. The first 10 games of the year, Marvin was struggling.
21% or something.
Yeah, he was shooting 20.5%. He started the year 8 of 39, and then since that, Marvin, from beyond the arc, is shooting 63 of 144, which is right over 43%.
Yeah. And
he was that player last year. He shot 43% last year from the three-point line, did it with a lot of volume. But now I'm seeing, this is the thing I think that's changed, the catch and shoot three from Marvin, which he's become lethal on that. But it was funny, I remember we were talking to him, now that was a couple months ago when the season was starting, it just wasn't going well from a shooting standpoint. And I remember asking him, I said, Marvin, what do you do when you get in a slump? And he stopped me, right? He said, "Oh, no. We don't. I don't use the S word." He said, "We don't use the S word around here." He said, I forget the word. He said, "I think you get in a funk." We call it a funk as a shooter. And he said, nothing. You keep working through it. Maybe you get some extra shots up. But he said, you don't panic. You just got to work through it and trust that it's going to work out. And man, his three-point shooting, where would the Hornets be without his three-point shooting? I don't think he's gotten enough credit for how important he's been. And now you're starting to watch him. He's slowly turning into a double-double machine for the Hornets over the last few weeks.
I think I wrote down today, he's scored double-digit in 5 games straight. It's easier to see that Kemba, gets kind of all the merits with the 25, 30 points a game. But Marvin's shooting, I think, 44% from 3 the last 5 games. He's 5th after starting the year at 21, 22%. He's now up to 38 on the year, which is top 5 amongst power forwards in the league. And I give him credit because I think you start a season like that, my instinct would be something's wrong, panic, time to change things. But a guy that's been in the league as long as he has, 13, 14 years, he trusts his work. He always says, I'm going to do everything I'm going to do. They're going to fall. And to have that sort of confidence, it's such a level of maturity. I mean, that's what you want to see. I trust the work I put in. I trust, what I did over the summer and what I'm doing now. And the fact that they've started to fall is great because obviously it helps the Hornets, but it just shows that this guy was not wavering. And I remember that day when he said, "I don't use the word slump at all." That was really funny. So I'll make sure not to bring it up again. Definitely not in a slump anymore or a funk.
And lastly here, because then we'll turn our sights to the general NBA before we wrap up, but especially in this stretch where Jeremy's been down, Devonte has now started the last 3 games. And has just been incredible. He had an 8 assist, 0 turnover game against the Nuggets, which he was such a big reason. I think the Hornets had a chance to win that game on the road. But, man, what about Devonte Graham? 34th overall pick out of the draft and looks like an absolute keeper. Looks like a legitimate high-end rotational player for the Hornets right now.
Absolutely. And I think what's kind of getting lost in this right now is this guy's not a shooting guard. He's a point guard. He played point guard at Kansas. He was the Big 12 Player of the Year. He's an All-American point guard. The fact that he's coming in and playing shooting guard while Jeremy's been down is unbelievable. And you don't see 8 assists, 0 turnover games from rookies. It's only the 3rd time it's happened in franchise history. And only Trae Young is the only one to do it again this year. So that's a sign of maturity. It's a sign of not trying to do too much, picking your spots, good decision-making. It's not normal. You see guys having the ball in their hands that much. So he's been great. He showed a little defense has been great. He's been knocked down a couple threes last night. He's been great. I think the maturity is what sticks out the most to him, and I think you get that when you've got a guy that went to school for 4 years, especially at a place like Kansas. With all the accomplishments they've had there, he's been through it all. He's been in big games. He's been in the Final Four. He's been in Big 12 championship games. If the moments don't faze him, said JB, and he just keeps learning it. And being around him, I mean, talk about a guy that loves. You send him to Greensboro, doesn't care. He'll go play in Greensboro. He's got family down there. Just wants to play whatever you need me to do. And what an asset to have on the team. And the future is very bright for him.
Yeah, that's another development too. Is the use of the swarm. And we knew that. I think Hornets fans got to get used to this, and they should. It's a good thing. It's what the really good teams in the NBA do. You use your G League team as another resource and tool. And so what James Borrego's used it for, and it actually helped with Devonte because he played a back-to-back-to-back.
Yeah,
Hornets played a back-to-back. He had a back-to-back-to-back. As he played in Greensboro on a Thursday, came up and played Friday, Saturday, the win over the Nets, and then a loss on the road to Washington just over a week ago. So Devontae's been active, and Coach said, yeah, that's helped him because as a player, you need to stay warm. You need those reps. And so we've seen, I think Dwayne Bacon now has been on 7
or 8 G League assignments now, yeah.
And why not, right? If you're not going to be in the rotation and you're not playing, it's a tool. It helps you stay ready. And then when your number is called, you're going to come in, and you're gonna know what it's like because you're running the same plays. It's the same system with Joe Wolf's squad. So I think that we're just starting to scratch the surface. I think of what the future of Hornets basketball looks like with the G League squad up in Greensboro, and I think Hornets fans should probably be excited about that too.
And that Swarm team is looking good this year. I think they're right in kind of the playoff position for the G League. I think they're around 500 or so, and I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding with the G League is it is not a demotion necessarily. It is not in baseball where you send a guy to AAA. That means you don't want him on the team. This is strictly a tool for development. Sometimes just in-game reps are the best kind of development, and you don't necessarily get those at the NBA. JB is going to play 10 guys. There's 14 guys on the roster. If everyone's healthy, 4 guys aren't going to play. And if you ask Devonte, I mean, there's no way that not going to. I mean, there's no way that going to the Swarm hasn't helped him this year. There's just no way, and he's in the position he is because he's done what he's supposed to do, done the game reps, practice reps, and it has been a great tool. And like you said, I think only scratching the surface.
They actually play this Thursday. They're going to play at the Fieldhouse. They play the Capital City Go-Go. But the Swarm, you talk about they're doing better this year. They are 11-12 going into that game. They had 14 wins all last year.
Yeah.
So it's less about the winning and losing. You want to win, obviously, but still, even that I think tells you, okay, the Hornets are using this team in a different way now, and I think that's exciting. It's part of what is underneath the umbrella of Mitch Kupchak and James Borrego as the Hornets try to reshape their basketball operation, and that's the exciting thing I think Hornets fans have to look forward to in the future. As we look across the rest of the NBA, so right now if the playoffs started today, and they don't, but we're basically at the halfway mark, Hornets are a playoff team. And if you had said that before the season started, I think you'd say, great job.
Sign me up.
Yeah, sign me up for that. But see how it turns out. But what are the other surprises across the NBA? I think Washington's got to be a big one, right? Everybody is so surprised, I think, with Washington, and they're still hanging around because of where the East is right now. But, you know, John Wall, maybe essentially, I mean, he's done for the year, really.
Oh, yeah.
Dwight Howard, maybe you see Dwight. I mean, that's going to be up in the air. I think the thought was like February or March, but
He might not even be in it at that point.
yeah, so I just think like Washington is such a big surprise how they've gone. I'll give Brooklyn a lot of credit. I think they've been better than people realize. They lost Karis LeVert, who was being so incredible for them early on.
He's an all-star candidate.
Yeah, and now
Good chance.
they've come back and they've battled back and they've settled in without him. Spencer Dinwiddie's been incredible. So what are the surprises to you? We'll start in the East, but what teams jump out to you where you say, man, I didn't see that coming?
I didn't think Milwaukee was going to be as good as they were. I think they got a new coach, and Mike Budenholzer, who was with the Hawks for the last few years, and I sometimes they brought back almost the exact same rosters last year other than their draft picks. They did add, I think one guy they did add that was kind of a ho-hum signing, but has been extraordinary for them, has been Brook Lopez. And the way they play, we've seen them twice this year, beat them once, and then they beat us on opening night. But, I mean, the way they play offense is it's Giannis goes down the middle. And
Driving kick.
Yeah, driving kick. And it's impossible to defend because Giannis either drives down and basically dunks it from the free throw line, or he'll throw it out to Chris Middleton or Bledsoe or Brook Lopez or Tony Stone. They have so many good three-point shooters. So I think that top five in the East is who we thought they were going to be, just maybe not in the exact order. And I've been pretty impressed with Toronto. I think we only saw them once this year, beginning of the year. I didn't think they were going to be as good as they were. I thought it would take some time to adjust to Kawhi Leonard and adding some new guys. And they put Jonas Valanciunas on the bench, and Kyle Lowry's been out too. But I think I read something yesterday. They are 7-1 in the second game of back-to-backs this year, and most of them without Kawhi Leonard, and Lowry has a back injury right now. So
Pascal Siakam's taken
he's
a big
been
step.
really,
He's
really
been
good
big for them. Yeah,
and they've drafted really well in recent years. OG Anunoby's been great. Fred VanVleet was a six-man top 3 finisher last year. So.
By the way, I'm going to get on a soapbox for 1 second, okay? All right?
All right.
Clear out some space here. Toronto, I know so many fans, and this is not unique to just the Hornets, but so many fans across the NBA say, oh, well, this is why you need to trade away a bunch of players and stockpile draft picks. Toronto is exactly where the Hornets were, or the Hornets are exactly where Toronto was. You go back 5-6 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. They had a lot of salary that people were saying, okay, you've kind of hit your ceiling. What are you going to become? They made small strategic moves slowly over time. They were able to create some flexibility. They never tanked, they never bottomed out, and they had a lot of their draft picks be either late lottery or mid first round picks because they were a fringe playoff team at that time, and they turned them into some of the guys you're talking about, whether it is Jonas Valanciunas, whether it is an OG Anunoby, Pascal Siakam. You go up and down the list.
Right, all these guys are
all
late
these
first,
guys,
second round guys,
and those are and you look, you know what they did? They built culture, and it's not easy to do, but that's the plan here. Like the plan with Mitch Kupchak and James Borrego is to be strategic, develop your own talent, draft really smart, make prudent decisions, and win. And I it always blows me away when people say, oh, what good does it do to get to the playoffs? You know what good it does? You learn what playoff basketball's like because it's different. Taste of it. Yeah, and then your guys say, you know what, that's fun.
I want to go back.
I want to go back.
I need to get back. Yeah.
Kemba's been itching for that for 3 years because he felt like, man, I was so close. I want to get my team over the hump. Look at Nick Batum. Nick Batum was injured in that playoff series. You think he doesn't want to get back to the playoffs and say, you know what, let me help my team? You know, there are so many guys I think you could point to and say, if they were out there, what would have happened, or if we get back, what changes. So I'm going to get off my soapbox, but I look at Toronto, and I'd say they're the example of why you don't need to tank or bottom out. Just be smart, stay the course.
Draft solid players.
Yeah, and look what can become
Find
your
guys
team.
that fit in. Their team, just everyone seems to fit such a good role there. I remember watching them when they played us earlier in the year, and C.J. Miles. I mean, they have 3-point shooters. They've got rebounders. They've got guys that can score. They've got defenders. They're very, very balanced. Very similar to Denver a few days ago. So I think that top 5 in the East is the Indiana, Milwaukee, Philly, Toronto, Boston is kind of the same, and then it's us, Detroit, Brooklyn, Miami. Maybe going for those last three spots. Maybe 5 teams going for those last 3 spots.
Nobody's talking about Indiana, but Indiana
quietly been very good.
And you talk about it earlier. The way they play every night, they know how to be consistent. They know the way they play, and they are very balanced. They do it every night. It's repeatable. And Victor Oladipo is just I call him mini Westbrook. He's just such a handful out there.
He's been good. And Domantas Sabonis has been really good. The other part of that trade they had for Paul George last summer, he's looking at possibly 6-man. He's double off the bench. Again, best teams, the ones that are balanced. Everyone's got a role. No one's necessarily trying to do too much. Obviously, you want to have your guy. If you need a bucket or something, go out and get it. But Indiana's been quietly very, very good team this year as well.
And I'd say out west, you got 2. Well, I think there are a lot of things you could talk about out west, but specifically Denver, everybody's got to be blown away with their start. Best start in NBA history for Denver. You go back to the ABA days, they've had better starts, but it's their best start in NBA history, and it's the deepest they've been into the season and been in the first place spot in the West, I think since 77, 78 for
They didn't
Denver.
make the playoffs last year.
Yeah, and each of the last 2 years, they've missed the playoffs on the final day,
yeah.
on the very final day of the season. So Denver's been impressive. Oklahoma City, though, think about OKC, who started 0-4, and since that, they're 25-11, or 25-10 rather.
Yeah.
OKC since starting 0-4, and everybody said, "What's wrong with OKC? What's going on with these guys?" And they've got the most, by far, the most dominant defense in the NBA, and they're doing it without Andre Robertson. Think if they get Robertson back at some point in the second half of the year.
Yeah, I remember watching them. We've already played them twice this year, and they're so physical. I mean, Steven Adams is just, I think he's deserving of an all-star spot. I mean, I don't know if OKC can get 3 guys in, but how good he is at getting offensive rebounds, and Westbrook has been really, really good.
And it's now Paul George's team,
Paul George
right? Would you agree on that?
Exceptional. Yeah, Paul George has been really, really good. I mean, I think he's a guy that could be All-NBA and All-NBA defensive team. I mean, he's that good on both sides of the ball and doesn't get necessarily the credit because you see Westbrook and the triple-doubles and the highlights, and that's who you think of when you think Oklahoma City. But Paul George has probably been their best player, and Steven Adams is right up there, too, with how good he is. Nothing flashy, but they get the job done.
I think the other surprise, obviously, is Golden State. And I know everybody's thinking, they'll still find a way to win it. But I don't know. This feels different to me with Golden State because you look at all these super teams that get built. There comes a time where it stops.
It just stops working.
And I would say we're probably getting closer to that window than not with Golden State. And everybody keeps acting like, they'll figure it out. Their defense is not good. They're middle of the pack in defense in the NBA, which has always been their calling card on top of their offense. And then, if you believe any of the stuff with who knows in the locker room with what's going on with the personality aspects of it there. But you just look at Golden State and something doesn't seem right with them. And I think there was some crazy stat when they lost on Christmas Day at home to the Lakers. Mm-hmm. And I forget what the stat was, but at that time, whatever number loss that was for them, there were seasons where they didn't hit that loss until...
Yeah, it was like their 10th or... might have been their 10th or 11th loss.
Yeah, and they went a full season without losing that many games. And then they hadn't hit that loss until, March or April.
Yeah.
So it puts into context, something's off, and I just don't believe it's a switch you flip. And Adam Silver got a lot of heat a couple years ago when he was on the halftime on ABC's finals broadcast, and Michelle Beadle, I remember, asked him, what do you think about the dominance for Golden State? People say it's bad for the league. And do you remember his response?
Not off the top of my head.
Yeah,
no.
So his response was, I think it's good for our league.
Yeah.
Because
you got a villain.
Yeah, and you make teams you know what they know what they need to shoot for, and it sets a bar, and you have to go chase it. Houston did it last year. Mm-hmm. Now I don't know if it's going to work again this year, but Houston went all in, try to go chase Golden State. LeBron did it obviously in Cleveland. Now he's going to try to topple them out in the West with LA. So you look at Toronto, what they did with a bold move for Kawhi. Philadelphia, not sitting on their laurels, they went and traded a bunch of assets to go get Jimmy Butler. So I do agree. He got heat at the time, but I think he was so spot on. If you're a winner in this league, it's not easy. You got to go get it. You got to go chase it. And so I think in the long run, they're their own worst enemy, right? They set the bar, and everybody now knows what you got to go do to go bring them down. So I don't know. I think something's going to happen with Golden State this year. If they win it, I wouldn't say I'd be surprised, but I don't think they're just going to waltz their way to another NBA championship. Something seems like it's going to be different this time around.
No, I don't think the NBA is just too good, and there's too many good teams to just turn it on after game 82. The Cavs kind of talked about that last year. I remember a little bit of the defense. We're just going to you can't just turn the defense on in the playoffs. It's not exactly how it works. And Golden State's a combination of things. Steph's been a little bit hurt, or was hurt earlier in the year. Draymond's not playing nearly as well as he has. Klay's not shooting nearly as well as he has. Their bench, signing all these guys, these huge contracts, your bench kind of takes a little bit of a hit.
Iggy, they're a little older.
They're just getting a little older, and sometimes that happens. You got Iguodala's been in the league for over 10, 11 years now, so it just adds up. It adds up.
Again, you go back to the summer, they added added Boogie Cousins, and everybody said, "Oh, it's unfair." I mean, that's a nice piece that they can bring in, but now you've got to fold him into all this stuff. Yeah. So it's not going to be easy. All of a sudden, he's going to want to come back, and you got to fold him into all the drama that's going on. So I don't know. I just think it's fascinating, and I think our league's actually in a good spot because how deep would you say? Like, I could legitimately count right now. I'd say Toronto, because of the way they play. Boston, Philly, Milwaukee, Toronto are all championship caliber teams. They've got star talent. They play on both ends of the court.
Deep.
And I would say Denver's tough because I think they lack a true star. I think Jokic is incredible. I still think they're a little bit away. So even though they're the 1 seed, I'm going to take them off. But I'd say Golden State, OKC, and Houston, and heck, even LA because they got LeBron. I'd say there are 4 teams in the West. So like right now, I don't think it's hyperbole to say 6 to 8 teams in the NBA could win an NBA championship this year.
And that's good for the league. I think it's really good. And I think it's I think when Adam Silver said that comment a couple years ago, you were never going to beat Golden State, the prime Golden State. You're not going to beat them playing Golden State's basketball. You've got to force them to play your style of basketball, slow them down. You're not going to out warrior the warrior, as some people say. So I think this is great for the league. It makes it very, very interesting in terms of, I think we're all kind of a little fatigued from, certainly unless something amazing happens, it's not going to be Cavs Warriors again this year unless the Cavs do something special in the East. But seeing some different things, I think it's good for the league, and it creates a lot more intrigue, and this league's growing, and having different teams contending is always a good thing.
All right, so we'll wrap up with a halfway point finals prediction. I say it's going to be Toronto and Golden State in the NBA Finals.
Am I allowed to copy that, or should I come up with
my own? You can do whatever you want.
I think I'm going to go, just to mix it up, I think I'm going to go Milwaukee. I'm going to go Milwaukee.
This is the year, huh?
In Golden State.
Okay, who wins it?
Ooh.
After all that, we're both going to say the Warriors.
I think the Warriors win it. And I'm only saying that because I don't want to pick your pick again, because that's not very original. But
I think Toronto wins it this year. I don't know why. I think they made a bold move. I think it's going to work. And I know Kyle Lowry has not been good in the postseason, but I think something's different with this team. I think they got the versatility on both ends of the court. They can score in multiple ways. Their big man combination is so deadly too. So I don't know. I say it works. I say Toronto knocks off the Warriors in 7 in the NBA Finals.
I might backtrack on Milwaukee because, like you said with Denver, I feel like they're not quite there. They're maybe a year away because they just haven't had that extended playoff success. They went in the first round. This team, this core of Bucks players, I think they were bounced in the first round last year.
Yeah.
I think I might say Boston.
Okay,
I think
Boston's a great one.
If it's not going to be Toronto, I think it's going to be Boston because they've got guys that they were right there last year. Like you said, they had that taste of the finals, or taste of maybe getting to the finals right there in the East. If they can Brad Stevens can kind of find everybody's role here and everyone clicks a little bit and maybe they go out and make a move and get healthy and Al Horford gets back to where he's going to be and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. The way Brad Stevens was able to get that team that was so decimated by injury last year to the brink of the finals, I think he's got something up his sleeve and can make it work. And if Gordon Hayward kind of gets back to where he was pre-leg injury, they've got a great bench too with Rozier and those guys. So I'm going to say Boston. I think Boston-Toronto would be a phenomenal Eastern Conference Finals, and I could see one of those teams.
That's going to do it. It's episode 31 of Courtside Seats. Sam Perley of Hornets.com. You can always check out his work at Hornets.com. And don't forget, All-Star voting still going on, and we got 2-for-1 All-Star voting that's coming up. I think January 11th and 12th are
next
going.
week.
All right, so 2-for-1 All-Star voting. You need to vote at nba.com/vote. You can vote via the NBA app or use Google. You can just search NBA All-Star, or you can search Kemba Walker's name, and you can vote that way once per day per device. And like I said, you get those 2-for-1 days. So we'll try to push Kemba not only the All-Star game, but make him a starter for the first time in his career right at the Hive, as we'll host that thing in February. So we'll see if we can make that happen. We'll be back next week, and we'll be back home for a little while. We're going to be back on the road again throughout a lot of January, but we'll round out this 6-game Eastern Conference road trip. If you've missed any episode of Courtside Seats, you can check it out. Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, pretty much anywhere podcasts are available, you can check it out. And of course, you can check it out at Hornets.com, the Hornets mobile app, and on our YouTube channel. Just search Charlotte Hornets and you'll find all of our great content there. For Sam Perley of Hornets.com, it's Chris Kroeger. We'll see you next week back here on Courtside Seats.